possibly now more than ever do we look at the world around us and get the sense that this is not what it's meant to be like. It's not what it's meant to look like. And not that this is a new revelation. Suffering and brokenness has always been around us, but now we have less distractions to hide from it. But the trouble is, we don't need to look externally from us to see the fracture, but it's present within, where our minds fracture reality itself. Whether it be the overwhelming anxiety or panic that a single thought or event could trigger, or the depression that comes crashing on top of you, filling you with so much anguish and sorrow, you can't find the strength to get out of bed. Our minds fracture reality around us, convincing us that we're our worst enemy, telling us that we're unlovable, worthless or weak. And this is the experience of one of my best friends, Alex, who suffers with depression. He wrote to me sharing his story, and I'll touch upon that later, but there's one line that encapsulates his experience. He says, "My life feels as hopeless as death." And when you hear his words, or if you know his reality a little too well, every part of you wants to cry out and mourn. We lament because we get the sense that this is not what life is meant to look like. It's not what it's meant to feel like. And so we cry out. But some will say that this cry is foolishness, that it's worthless to cry out because who or what is there to listen to your cry? That there is no God and thus there's no ideal standard of creation. There's no good or bad or reason, that your life, meaning and value is just whatever you make of it. So get on with it, it's an accident anyway. But then where does this leave us with our cry, our suffering, our pain? Christianity, on the other hand, is not only able to make sense of our pain, but it gives us a friend in the midst of our darkness. I think of a time where you were in grief or sadness, and in that moment, what did you want? You didn't necessarily just want to be free from your sadness, but to have a friend within the sadness. Someone that is there, who knows, who understands and is familiar with your pain. Someone that cries with you. Someone that understands where you're coming from. Someone that loves you and accepts you just as you are, not expecting you to be anything or give anything in return. And there's no closer friend like that than Jesus. Constantly through the eyewitness recollections, stories of his life, we see his love and compassion. It defines who he is, and we can see numerous stories of Jesus reaching out to those that no one ever sees, to the outcasts, the lowly, the sad and ashamed. Jesus sees them and he loves them when no one else would. In Matthew's biography, we even read Jesus saying this, "Come to me all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." So in your burdens, in your tiredness, in your darkness, Jesus calls to you and he is there with you. And he's there weeping alongside you. When Jesus meets with one of his closest friends, Mary, a woman called Mary, who's grieving the loss of her brother, Jesus weeps with her. That's the shortest verse in the whole Bible, just 2 words. Jesus wept. He wept with Mary and he weeps with you. But the last point, does he know? The hardest part, or one of the hardest side effects of mental illnesses is the isolation. No one knows what you're going through and you can't even have the words to tell them yourself. You long for someone who's been there, who has survived and who understands to be with you now. Jesus knows. The night before he was betrayed by one of his closest companions, to be crucified to a cross, Jesus cries out, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Take this from me." He is one familiar with the darkness. He knows that suffering, and that's how he can weep with you. That's how he can empathize with you. And my friend Alex, who I mentioned earlier, he writes this about his suffering. When all you can feel when you look at yourself is hatred, it can be so hard to understand how the creator of the universe can love you. If I can't love myself, how can God love me enough to sacrifice his son to die for me? The answer is, of course, his love is stronger than my hate. And this doesn't mean that he no longer suffers. He does every day, but he knows he's not alone in his suffering. He knows that God is there alongside him, accompanying him. And sometimes he even pursues with joy as he hears the words God speaks over him. "You are my son whom I love. With you I am well pleased." And now we're just scratching the tip of the iceberg here. I wish we had more time just to delve into this. It's such a personal and heartbreaking issue. But I just want to leave you with this. Alex and I have not found this hope and this friend from mere wishful thinking, for that would not be strong enough to withstand the constant trials of the world, but through months and years of questioning and wrestling with this ourselves. And I want to encourage you to do the same. Think about this, test and see for yourself who Jesus is.